Imagine being so horrifying that even your own father wrote a book about how terrified he was of you. Meet Jeffrey Dahmer, better known as the Milwaukee Cannibal. Born into a seemingly normal family, Dahmer's life took a chilling turn as he descended into a nightmare of his own making. Over a span of 13 years, from 1978 to 1991, he committed heinous crimes that sent shockwaves across the nation. Dahmer's infamous reputation was not just for the number of his victims, but for the gruesome nature of his crimes, earning him the chilling moniker, the Milwaukee Cannibal. His reign of terror left a dark mark on the annals of criminal history, a horrifying testament to the depths of human depravity. His tale is not for the faint of heart, but it's a story that needs to be told, to remember the victims and to serve as a stark reminder of the darkness that can lurk within. This is the chilling tale of Jeffrey Dahmer, the Milwaukee Cannibal. Born in 1960, Dahmer's life of terror began with an ordinary childhood that soon spiraled into darkness. As a young boy in Milwaukee, Jeffrey Dahmer seemed to be just like any other child, with a love for animals and a curiosity about the world. But beneath this veneer of normalcy, there were undercurrents of something more sinister. Dahmer's family life was far from idyllic. His parents, Lionel and Joyce Dahmer, had a tumultuous relationship, often marred by bitter disagreements and constant tension. The instability at home became a breeding ground for Dahmer's emerging unsettling tendencies. At an early age, Dahmer displayed an unusual fascination with dead animals. He collected roadkill, dissected them with surgical precision, and preserved their bones. This morbid curiosity was initially dismissed as a peculiar interest in biology, but it was an early indication of the dark path he was to tread. As Dahmer grew older, his disturbing behavior escalated. He became increasingly withdrawn, preferring the company of his gruesome collections over human interaction. His school performance began to suffer, and his social skills deteriorated. His parents, preoccupied with their own marital issues, failed to notice the warning signs. Dahmer's teenage years were fraught with struggle. He grappled with his sexuality, a conflict that further isolated him from his peers. He began to consume alcohol excessively, a coping mechanism that only exacerbated his antisocial behavior. Despite the growing concerns, Dahmer's tendencies were largely ignored or dismissed by those around him. His parents, teachers, and neighbors chalked up his behavior to the awkwardness of adolescence, failing to recognize the serious implications. In hindsight, these early years were a chilling precursor to the horrors that Dahmer would later inflict. Even in these early years, the signs were already there, hinting at the monster Dahmer would become. Dahmer's troubled childhood was a grim foreshadowing of his future as the Milwaukee Cannibal. It serves as a sobering reminder that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are not those lurking in the shadows, but those walking among us, hidden behind the guise of normalcy. By the time Dahmer was 18, he had already claimed his first victim. The year was 1978, a time of disco and bell-bottoms, but for one young man in Ohio, it was a year of darkness and a descent into the unthinkable. Dahmer's first victim was a hitchhiker named Stephen Hicks. The 18-year-old was just looking for a ride home from a concert, but instead he found himself lured into the twisted world of Dahmer. The young Dahmer, driven by a perverse curiosity and uncontrollable urges, invited Hicks to his house under the pretense of continuing the party. Once there, the evening took a sinister turn. When Hicks decided to leave, Dahmer couldn't bear the thought of his company departing. It was then that Dahmer bludgeoned Hicks with a barbell, ending the young man's life in a fit of panic and rage. The aftermath was a gruesome sight. Dahmer dismembered Hicks's body in the basement, attempting to hide the evidence of his horrific act. He then buried the remains in a shallow grave in his backyard, thinking he had effectively erased his crime from existence. But the memory of what he had done was far from erased. Dahmer's mind was a tumult of emotions, fear, guilt, and a chilling thrill that he had taken someone's life. And yet, there was a dark satisfaction, a sense of power that he had never known before. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and the memory of his first kill began to fade. But the urges didn't. They grew stronger, more insistent. Dahmer found himself yearning for that feeling of control, the thrill of taking a life. It was a craving that would only grow, a hunger that would never be satisfied. This was just the beginning of Dahmer's descent into darkness. The first victim had been claimed, a line had been crossed, and there was no turning back. The Milwaukee Cannibal had been born, and the world would soon come to know the terror that lurked within this seemingly ordinary man. Over the next 13 years, Dahmer would claim the lives of 16 more victims, a horrifying tally that would send chills down the spine of anyone. Dahmer, often referred to as the Milwaukee Cannibal, had a pattern that was as chilling as it was predatory. His victims, typically young men, were often lured with promises of money or simply a friendly conversation. The locations varied, from bars to bus stops, but the result was always the same. These men, unsuspecting and often vulnerable, would unknowingly walk into a nightmare from which they would never awaken. His methods were gruesome, a terrifying blend of manipulation, violence, and a disturbing fascination with death and control. Dahmer didn't just kill his victims, he sought to dominate them, to own them even in death. It was this terrifying obsession that led him to his most horrifying act: cannibalism. Dahmer sought to consume his victims, in a twisted attempt to keep them with him forever. As the years passed and the number of victims grew, Dahmer became more brazen, more reckless. But it was this recklessness that would eventually lead to his downfall. In the summer of 1991, one of Dahmer's intended victims managed to escape. Bruised and terrified, the young man led the police back to Dahmer's apartment. What they discovered there was beyond comprehension. Evidence of Dahmer's horrific crimes was found throughout the apartment. Photographs of mutilated bodies, tools used for dismemberment, and the remains of his victims were all found within those walls. The full horror of Dahmer's actions was laid bare for the world to see. The revelation sent shockwaves through the community and the nation as a whole. The Milwaukee Cannibal, a man who had lived among them, had been committing unthinkable acts of violence and depravity for over a decade. Dahmer's horrifying acts were finally brought to light in 1991. A grim chapter in the annals of crime had come to an end, but the scars left by Dahmer's heinous acts will forever remain etched in the minds of those who were touched by this nightmare. Caught and convicted, Dahmer's reign of terror finally came to an end. The Milwaukee Cannibal, as he was notoriously known, was finally ensnared in the web of his own gruesome deeds. In the summer of 1991, Dahmer's arrest shocked a nation that had been unknowingly living alongside a monster. Prowling the night, he had left a trail of victims, their voices forever silenced, their families forever marred. Dahmer's trial was a spectacle that held the country in its icy grip. The testimonies, the appalling details, the sheer inhumanity of his crimes, all unfolded before an audience caught between horror and disbelief. The evidence was undeniable, and the jury, their hearts heavy with the weight of justice, found Dahmer guilty. He was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms, an eternity spent in the cold, unforgiving confines of a prison cell. As news of his conviction spread, a collective sigh of relief echoed across the nation. Yet, for the families of his victims, there was no relief, no release from the nightmare that had consumed their lives. They carried their grief, their anger, their unanswered questions like a shroud that could never be lifted. Their loved ones were gone, their lives stolen by a man who showed no remorse, no hint of humanity. The public's reaction to Dahmer's crimes was a mix of outrage, fear, and a deep soul-stirring sadness. Society struggled to comprehend the depth of his depravity, to understand how such evil could exist. The Milwaukee Cannibal had been stopped, but the scars he left behind were indelible, the wounds he inflicted still raw. Dahmer's life ended in 1994, but his chilling legacy lives on. His name became a byword for horror, a symbol of the darkness that can lurk within the human soul. His story serves as a stark reminder of the nightmare that ended, yet continues to haunt us, a specter from the past that echoes in the annals of true crime. The Milwaukee Cannibal may be gone, but the shadow of his monstrous deeds will forever darken the pages of history. Today, Dahmer's name still sends shivers down the spine. The infamous Milwaukee Cannibal, as he's known, has left an indelible mark on popular culture. His crimes, gruesome and horrifying, have been retold in countless documentaries, books, and films, each one attempting to dissect the psyche of this serial killer. This continuing fascination with Dahmer's life and crimes is a testament to our collective desire to understand the darkest corners of the human mind. However, it also serves as a chilling reminder of the horrors that one man was capable of. The lessons from Dahmer's case are numerous and profound, shaping the way we approach crime investigation and mental health. It changed our understanding of psychopathy, pushing us to delve deeper into the minds of those who commit such heinous acts. This is the unnerving tale of Jeffrey Dahmer, the Milwaukee Cannibal, a story that continues to haunt us to this day.